Hey guys, it's Logan here with Hydra 572 bringing you a review of the Zero Tolerance 0200. If you guys have seen my most recent EDC update, you know that this has become a folding tactical blade of choice for me. I've been carrying it a lot in my right front pocket, and through the review you guys will begin to see why, I believe. I do take some issues with the knife, but it will be a mostly positive review, I think. I'll go ahead and get started with intended usage, and that is a folding tactical blade and not a lot else. That's not something that I typically get to say. More often I'm talking about something like the Resilience, where I say that it's an EDC blade, but if you had to push it in to the defensive role that you could, and that it would be a good implement to have. That's not the case with the Zero Tolerance. I don't really see purchasing it for EDC tasks. I think it's beaten out by a lot of competitors, really, if you were looking at an EDC knife. But as a folding tactical knife, I do believe it stands up. I think that's what it's designed as, according to me at least. The pricing, around $160 on Blade Play, and that will be free shipping because it's over $100 or $120 shipped on eBay. The blade profile, as you guys know, I love recurves, and this knife is no exception. The tip is a sturdy, wide tip. As you can see, the grinds conspire such that we have a swell around an inch before the tip. So maybe not acute enough to do some tip cutting that you might want to do. Hopefully you wouldn't have to do that with your folding tactical blade. Hopefully you've got an EDC utility type folder that's got a more acute tip that you could use for anything like that. Belly, you're going to have plenty on a recurve design. For a folding tactical blade, that means great slashing, plenty of cutting power. The steel is 154 cm. The retention was decent. I would have liked to have seen a little better. It's good, not really the best that I've tested, considerably better than 8CR13 MOV. I don't know if on this particular blade it stands up to like the S30V that we saw on the native, but they are two completely different blade profiles, edge geometries, all of that stuff. Suffice to say, I would have liked to seen a little bit better out of a knife this expensive. The sharpening was easy enough, not to get into the metallography too much because I am not an expert, but I think what we're seeing here is that it's a hard steel that has a decently small grain size, because it does take quite a few more repetitions than a softer steel like 8CR13 MOV through your sharpening media to get it up to like a hair shaving sharp. But I was able to get it there relatively easily, possibly a bit more forgiving because, like I said, lots of extra repetitions. If you mess one up here or there, maybe not as much of a big deal. But I wish I could get it a little bit sharper with 154 cm. I know it's a performance steel. This is my first experience with it. I wasn't really able to get that wet hair whittling edge sharpness, but I was able to get hair shaving, so maybe I should just stop whining. But the steel overall good. You know, I would have liked to have seen a little better, but I would always like to see a little better. The grind was a little bit steep for such a thick stock blade right out of the box. As you guys can see, I backed it up pretty significantly using the Wicked Edge, and that's a problem with nearly every knife that I take out of the box, that I would like to see a more gradual grind. So no fault there. The deployment, well, we have the flipper in the back. We have some big old thumb studs, well terraced, and we have our rotational flip openings, all a pretty quick option when you pull the knife out of your pocket. This little ramp here, the other side of the thumb ramp, it can be used as a wave. It's just not very consistent, not for me anyways. I found it highly dependent on the pair of pants that I was wearing and just the way that I pulled it out of my pocket, in the way that, you know, like a Spyderco with a zip tie mod or a Cold Steel with a thumb plate, Spyderco with an Emerson opener. None of those knives have been anywhere near this temperamental for me. So I would not recommend training to open the knife that way. I would suggest pulling it out of your pocket and either flicking it open or using the thumb studs. Still a decently quick deploying knife. I would like to see a little bit more development there, because if we could wave this knife open, that would be a serious improvement in my mind. I love knives that wave open. I think it's pretty much the optimal deployment mechanism. But yeah, we don't see it here. It is still decently fast. The lock is a jimped liner lock. As you can see, we've got pretty early lockup. And some pretty thick liners, very secure lock, something that I also don't get to say very often very little play. I'm actually on this knife going to say no play. That's something that I've hardly ever said before. I am a play snob. If there's any detectable play, I will report on it. And there really isn't here, and that's with the pivot loose enough that I can still use the flipper to get it open. So that is knocked right out of the park. No play at all. The handle, the material is a 3D machined G10. It is an open flow-through design. As you can see, we've got some cool barrel spacers there. Just a stylistic thing. The liners are thick skeletonized steel. Gonna add some weight, no complaints from me. I am a teenager, I do not carry a concealed pistol, so weight really isn't an issue for me. The ergonomics, well, this is one of my major dings on the knife. This palm swell here, so you guys can see that protrusion there, it's kind of dumb. When I was doing the hard cutting with the cardboard, it began to hurt my hand, hurt my fingers, and I really don't see a reason for it. I don't think it's putting your hand into a stronger position for something like stabbing or slashing. It could be a more stylistic preference, but I think it gets in the way of functionality a bit, so that's a bummer. Also, the spot for the clip, if you wanted to carry it in tip-down position, is raised in the 3D machined handle, and that does begin to cut, not cut, but irritate. Depending on how you're gripping the knife, it did begin to irritate my thumb in this area. So those are two ergonomic dings. Overall, still a good hand feel. Like I said, a heavy blade, a thick blade with thick liners, and a thick G10. So it fills up your hand pretty well, and I do like the ergonomics overall, just those two dings there. The jimping, interestingly enough, is slanted a little bit to the side. It's not straight across like we would typically see. It doesn't hurt functionality at all, I just thought it was interesting. It is sticky jimping. As always, I would like to see it extended a little further. Not sure why we can't have that, but we don't hardly see it on any knife. It is a little bit on the sharp side, not enough that I've done any filing or anything, but it is a little bit sharp. It might help with gloves, but with bare skin, it is a little bit irritating. If you were to have to grip it with your thumb on the jimping for a long time, I think you would find that irritating. But I guess I would rather have it on the sticky side and a little bit on the sharp side than have it be too dull and have it not be grippy at all. The clip is good. It came in really strong at first, like difficult to get on my pants strong. I don't believe I bent it. I think it's just worn in naturally. But it is a good strong clip, and it is four-way reversible. So there you go. Good clip design. Now the presentation is one of the other few dings that I have against the knife. For a premium knife, a $120 knife, I think the presentation could have been a little bit better. The pivot came in tight, like too tight to use the flipper. That might be because my fingers, my hands are a little less strong than the military and police market that they're trying to sell this knife into, but I don't think that should be an issue. I think my hands should be strong enough to operate any knife that I get. The edge came less sharp than some other Kershaws, like the $25 Clash came sharper than the $120 Zero Tolerance. I'm not sure what's up with that. And it wasn't terrible. You can see it in my first impressions video on this knife. It was cutting paper, so a lot of people would believe that that is a very sharp edge, but being a knife buff, obviously we know that it could be sharper, and should be sharper, really, for this much money. The quality is really good. The hardware choice for the pivot is a little bit confusing. I know that this is a fighting knife, and typically with a fighting knife we'll either see Torx like usual, or we'll see something like a flathead or a Phillips, so that you can service it in the field, but this seems like a confusing choice, just because I don't take wrenches or sockets with me. I will probably have my multi-tool, and I think that's true of a lot of military and police. They'll have flatheads and Phillips. So if that was the pivot screw, they would be able to tighten and loosen it. But I don't really know of anyone who just has a wrench out with them in the field to get at that pivot with. So that's really confusing. But otherwise, we've got big screws throughout, high quality, all the way through. So no serious things there, just that confusing point on the pivot. I'm not sure why they chose to do it that way. It does look cool, so maybe it was a stylistic choice, but on a folding tactical knife I would prefer functionality over style. The value, we've got 154 cm plus Cool 3D Machine G10 for $120. That works for me. I think it's meeting a pretty decent price point for the materials and the quality that you're getting. Into competition, we have quite a bit of competition actually in a relatively similar price range. Cold Steel, a lot of the stuff they make, the Voyagers, Espadas, Recon 1s, Rajas, the Spartan, lots of offerings from Cold Steel in the tactical folding fighting knife market. Spyderco, the Persian maybe, a couple of their other designs maybe, but definitely the military and definitely the police. I think you could make the argument for the civilian. Benchmade, their Onslaught maybe, their Adamas, some of their other folding tactical knives, sure, and assorted Emersons, of course, all tactical blades. Pass or fail, I'm going to definitely say a pass. I think it is convincing. It is a good blade to have in hand. It does feel very sturdy, and I don't think the few dings that I have against it, those being like the palm swell, the raised pad for the clip, the edge coming in not very sharp, and the pivot coming too sharp, the wave not really working. I don't think those really take away from what the knife is, and that is a great option for a folding fighting knife, folding tactical blade. Great recurve blade, decent edge geometry out of the box, easy enough to sharpen back to a great edge geometry, easy enough to get hair shaving sharp. Overall, I'm going to say it is a pass. Yeah, I think it's a great little blade. I think me carrying it on an everyday basis is basically the highest recommendation that I can give. I do trust this knife. If I ever did need to defend myself, I think I could do it very effectively with this blade. I'm not afraid of it closing up on my hand or anything like that. So overall, that all amounts to a pass, with a couple of dings, suggestions for improvement, stuff like that. Move on to statistics before we're done. The overall length is 8 3/4, blade length is 3.875, handle length is 5 1/4, blade thickness is 0.156 inches, and the weight is 7.7 ounces, a relatively heavy blade. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. It's been a great little blade for me. It has seen a lot of carry since December, and it has stood up like a champ. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more of the same.